Citizens Forum, just to bring up again the appreciation that myself and the board have for our previous chairman of the board. He has had to deal with some things that I could say that there's never been a supervisor in the history of Culpeper County that had to deal with what he was faced with, and that was operating a county and directing a board during a global pandemic. And I've had several people who have reached out and said that, yeah, he did that, and the board, the collaboration between the board working together, we essentially never missed a beat. So again, with that said, not to leave out any of the other accomplishments during that time, just like to say again, thank you for your leadership for the past 4 years. With that, I'd like to go ahead and open up our Citizens Forum. I don't really have any sign-up sheets this afternoon, but please, when you come up, honor our code of conduct, direct your statements here to the board, and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes. And if you want to come up and speak on anything that's not on the regular agenda, raise your hand, be recognized, and please come up. With that, I'll open the Citizens Forum. All right. Not seeing any hands in the air, we'll close the Citizens Forum. Next up, we have on an agenda before us. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Let's go.
Hearing none, we'll accept the agenda as presented and move forward to item 4.0, which is a very special item on the agenda tonight. We have the distinct honor of recognizing a true Culpeper native for his dedication to the county and to his service with Human Services. With that, I'll turn this over to County Administrator John Eggerson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board. Tonight we're going to read a resolution of appreciation that was adopted at this morning's board meeting to honor Peter Makarski. Peter, if you want to come forward, I'll read this resolution into the record, and then the chairman will meet you at the podium. Whereas Peter Makarski stepped down from the Culpeper County Human Services Board effective December 31st, 2023, after 14 years of faithful service during which he served as vice chairman and chairman. And whereas Peter Makarski is admired by all for his unwavering dedication, leadership, integrity, and hard work. And whereas Peter began his service on the Human Services Board after being appointed in February of 2010, and since that time he has been an integral part of many important projects and successes. Whereas just a few of the many things that have occurred during his tenure on the board include relocating the Department of Human Services offices from Davis Street to Industry Drive, establishing a new career center, securing a new facility for Full Circle Thrift and expanding the cosmetology school, expanding youth services through Kids Central, and receiving 2 federal grants for the construction of early Head Start facilities. And whereas in addition to his many years of service on the Human Services Board, Peter served his community in many ways, but his passion for human services was first and foremost. And whereas Peter was a longtime employee of the Virginia Employment Commission, and the combination of that service with his time on the Human Services Board reflects over 40 years of dedication to human services delivery. Now therefore be it resolved that the Culpeper County Board of Supervisors extends its heartfelt gratitude and appreciation for a job well and faithfully done, and be it further resolved that the Culpeper County Board of Supervisors and county staff wish through this resolution to recognize Peter Makarski for all that he has accomplished in his service to our county, presented this second day of January 2024.
I still notice the big boy mic hasn't been delivered yet. It's been on back order for a few years. First of all, thank the board and John Edgerton. so much for this honor, and it's been a pleasure with what I did and have been doing for a long time. And I just also want to thank this board. A lot of the things that we did through Culpeper Human Services involved the transferring of funds and moving things and grants. And these grants, just the way the finances work, have to come through and be approved by this board. And I want to thank this board for all the support that you have given us, over these, the 14 years that I've been on the Human Services Board. And the projects that were noted on here could not have been done without the support of the board and the administration of Culpeper County. And so I want to thank you all very much. And I brought part of my family with me, my wife, and a whole bunch of my family. In case the fight broke out, I have backup now. And that's it. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. One last thing. We get to leave now and go to dinner. Y'all got to sit here and take care of county business. Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to item 5.0, general county business. These items will require a public hearing. Item 5.01 is the board will hold a public hearing and will consider approval of the transfer of tax map parcel 41A1-4-Y-7 containing approximately .4429 acres to the town of Culpeper. With that, I'll turn it over to our county administrator, John Eggerson, to brief the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, this evening we have a public hearing to consider transferring a parcel of property owned by Culpeper County to the town of Culpeper. This is a parcel, one of three actually, that were involved in a transaction that was established to help the People, Inc. To create the Lightfoot Affordable Housing Project. And there's a parcel of land to be donated, actually two parcels of land to be donated by the county to People, Inc. And the third parcel, which is a small triangular parcel at the corner of East Street and Old Fredericksburg Road. It's hard to see on that map, but it's a triangular parcel right at that intersection. That parcel was thought to be owned by the town. Title work ended up establishing that it actually belonged to the school board, so that was then transferred from the schools to the county. And now, in turn, the county needs to transfer it to People, Inc. As part of this project. As a matter of background, the reason we are here having a public hearing on this is that any time the county gives up interest in a property, it does require a public hearing. So following the public hearing tonight, the recommendation is that staff be authorized to draft the deed and transfer the parcel to the town.
Thank you, John. Any questions or comments for John? And just to be clear, for clarification, the transfer is going to be from the school board or from the county to the town?
To the town.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Questions or comments before I open the public hearing? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing for anyone who would like to come and speak on this matter. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and open it back up for discussion or motion.
Oh, this is in the East Fairfax district? Great. Then I look forward to a motion from East Fairfax.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that the board approves the transfer of tax map parcel 41A1-4-Y-7 to the town of Culpeper.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. Moving on to item 5.02. the board will hold a public hearing and will consider approval of the establishment of a public access easement over county-owned property in order to make a pedestrian connection from Lightfoot Apartment Project to Wolford Street. With that, I'll again turn it over to our county administrator to brief the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is somewhat related to the previous item in that it is again related to the Lightfoot Apartment Project. As People Inc. seeks to gain town approval of their site plan, they did learn that one of the site plan requirements of the town is that they have a public sidewalk that connects to existing public sidewalk somewhere else, elsewhere in town. That access can be had across the county-owned property that is the home to Early Head Start. On the plat that you see posted, there's kind of a squiggly line. That is a 10-foot wide public access easement that we are asking to establish across the county's property. It follows that somewhat circuitous path because that is actually an existing asphalt pathway that is in place today. So upon establishment of the easement, it becomes a public access pathway, and the county will continue to own it and maintain it, but it will allow public traffic, and that will satisfy the town's ordinance requirements and allow the Lightfoot Apartments project to proceed. We did look at a number of different alternatives to this, but it seemed like the only reasonable solution to the issue. Again, because we're giving up an interest in public property with this, it does require a public hearing.
Thank you, John. Any questions or comments for John? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone who'd like to come up and speak on this matter, raise your hand and we'll bring you to the front. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and open it back up for any discussion or motion.
I just have one comment. I do want, and this would be more, I guess, directed at the town and town council, is the fact that Wolford Street and its adjoining Old Fredericksburg Road and Old Orange Road have had 3 pedestrian fatalities. And as we add more people to that area, I think it would be good for the town to look into safety measures with VDOT in those areas to ensure that we, with the increased traffic, we don't have increased accidents.
Only other, at committee level, I'd like to thank former Chairman Deal for the work that he did, the legwork on making sure that this all made sense. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the establishment of a public access easement as described in item 5.02 of the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And motion carries unanimous. Moving on to Planning Commission business. Tonight, we have 3 cases that will require a public hearing. The first case is case number U-2240-23-1, request by Curtis Cooper or Havala Homes LLC for a conditional use permit to allow the construction and operation of a private recreation facility, specifically a shooting sports facility, for use by youth teams and local youth groups. And with that, I will ask our planning director and zoning administrator, Neil Drumheller and Sam McLaren, to brief the board.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll begin by reading the letter from the Planning Commission into the record. The Board of Supervisors will consider a request by Curtis Cooper for a conditional use permit to allow construction and operation of a private recreational facility, specifically a shooting sports facility for use by youth teams and local youth groups known as Piedmont Rod and Gun Club per section 3-2-2.16 of the zoning ordinance and in accordance with Article 17 use permits of the zoning ordinance. The property is zoned A1 agricultural and is located off 658, which is Mount Pony Road in the Stevensburg Magisterial District. It's found on tax map 64, parcels 2E, 2F, and 40B. The case was considered by the Planning Commission after proper advertising and public hearing held on Wednesday, October 11th, and again on December 13th, 2023. The Planning Commission found that the request is in conformance with, the Planning Commission found the request to be in conformance with Article 3-2-2.16 of the zoning ordinance and in accordance with Article 17. Upon motion duly carried, the Planning Commission recommends to the Board of Supervisors by a 6-0 vote that the proposed use permit be approved with the following conditions. And there are 10, so please bear with me. Number 1, the permit is granted for exclusive use by Piedmont Rod and Gun Club or Curtis Cooper and members, and shall not be transferable to any other landowner and/or user unless prior permission by the Culpeper County Board of Supervisors is granted. Number 2, the applicant shall be required to submit a site plan in accordance with Article 20 of the zoning ordinance prior to commencement of any proposed uses. Number 3, the forthcoming site plan shall provide details as presented by the applicant in the application material submitted on November 28th, 2023 regarding range layout, safety berm details, acoustic baffling details. Number 4, the applicant shall maintain and preserve a riparian buffer of 50 feet from any perennial waterway that traverses the property. Number 5, the formal tree preservation area or non-disturb buffer shall be reserved and created on areas adjacent to the perimeter of the parcel. This shall include a minimum of 200 feet buffer from all planned use areas. Number 6, the applicant shall provide a commercial entrance in accordance with minimum VDOT standards prior to commencement of operations. Number 7, the hours of operation shall be limited to Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. until sunset, and on Sundays between the hours of 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. Number 8, the applicant shall provide the Office of Planning and Zoning evidence of insurance coverage prior to commencement of operations. The minimum amount per claim shall be $1 million and $2 million aggregate. Number 9, the applicant must conduct and submit to the Office of Planning and Zoning a noise study. No noise from the proposed conditional use shall emanate beyond the subject parcel property line at any time that exceeds the current nighttime decibel limits for agricultural zoning, 65 decibels, as found in Chapter 10A of the County Code. And finally, number 10, the following shall be prohibited on site: alcoholic beverages, weapons of .50 caliber or higher, and fully automatic weapons. Sincerely, Sanford Reeves, Jr.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Neil did the hard part, reading all those conditions, so I'll try to keep my part simple and short. And Mr. Cooper, and representing Piedmont Rod and Gun Club, is here and can answer questions as well as we get into this case. Planning Commission, as you heard it twice. They had 2 public hearings for this in October and December. This is a special use permit that the board's considering tonight for Article 17. Article 17 has your basic health, safety, and welfare standards. Also has a check with the comprehensive plan, or your 2 main, and then making sure that it's not injurious or potentially injurious to improvements or the neighborhood in general. So the staff reviewed it under that light. The Planning Commission has reviewed it under that light. The property that we're looking at is actually 3 different properties on the screen in red. Mount Pony Road, 658, is right here. There's an easement that goes through the property, I believe, about right here. It traverses this property that would not be owned by the applicant, but they do have a legal access easement to get to 658. The facility itself would be on what are basically vacant wooded parcels today. They would construct the facilities that would occupy both of these parcels and potentially some of the southern parcel as well. There are some streams on the property. The Soil and Water Conservation District, VDOT, our normal reviewing agencies looked at the case. VDOT recommended the commercial entrance. Primary concern for the Soil and Water Conservation District, and staff shares that concern. There are a couple of tributaries or streams on the property, so the applicant should establish some type of riparian buffers, and that would be looked at with any forthcoming site plan. Main concerns throughout the review that staff had, the Planning Commission had as well, were centered around noise. With this type of proposal being a shooting facility, a target shooting facility, even though the properties are large, we know that sound can carry. There's not a lot of experience in the county as far as these types of facilities. There's a couple of private facilities, and there's one that has been used historically off of Route 15 for Cedar Mountain Youth in the past. This would be a new facility, similarly run, although Mr. Cooper can share how they run things today and what they would be doing differently for this property. Those noise concerns, to Mr. Cooper's credit, he has gone out and tried to do an acoustic study. He's working on that. That's in progress now, I believe, and he can share more on that. The other concerns that staff have would be around buffers. You do have a few, it's rural in nature, but you do have a few sporadic residential structures along 658. Each adjacent neighbor, at least ones that touch the property that we're looking at for a use permit night, were notified by the county twice for tonight and then prior for the Planning Commission as well. We have received some concerns over the past couple of months from various neighbors that some spoke to the Planning Commission, some to staff, but nothing formal was submitted. Otherwise, that would have been added to board docs. Mr. Chairman, staff doesn't have any further comments other than what was presented by the Planning Commission in our staff report that was included in the board docs. Those conditions, I believe, are enforceable. While they're 10, 10 is a little more than typically we would see for a use permit. I believe the back and forth that the Planning Commission had with the applicant and the concerns that were shared, I believe that those conditions do strike a good compromise for this use permit in this location, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about that.
Thank you, Sam. I do have one comment, and I don't think you'll be able to answer this, but going forward, with a lot of these requests for shooting areas or venues or whatever that create noise. I know in the past we've had issues with being able to have a decibel meter that was certified that, you know, could actually stand up to say, yes, this is more than what is allowed. So for the agencies that are here tonight, just as a note that it would be great if we could get that in the tool chest going forward, that we have these decibel meters as more and more applicants come forward with it that create a noise issue. But that said, any other questions for Sam? And I see the applicants here. Before I call him, if you'd like to come up.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question. As far as the conditional use permit, we have the general mechanisms that if any of these conditions are consistently not met, that we do have revoke capability based on.
Yes, ma'am. And we've recently revised that code section in Article 17 to make that explicit and known and stated in code. But yes, any violation of any potential condition we would first issue a letter of violation to give the applicant a chance, or the owner at that point, a chance to rectify or resolve the issue. But if not, the board does have the ability to revoke that use permit.
Any other questions for staff? Would the applicant like to come up and add to Mr. McLaren's presentation?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Board. Obviously, I'm the applicant, Curtis Cooper, here with my wife, Cynthia, my daughter, Lily, home from college. We've lived in Culpeper County most of our adult lives. We've raised our kids here. Our kids attended elementary school through high school. I've worked with youth and specifically taught youth shooting sports for 20 years now, so I guess you could say it's a passion of mine that has turned into a passion of our family. If it's okay, I'm not going to go into great detail regarding all of the details and the specifications that were submitted, but if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding what was submitted, regarding the technical stuff that was submitted. As an overview, it's a typical rod and gun club that's specifically designed to support and substantiate and provide funds for our youth shooting teams. Some of our youth athletes are here this evening. We addressed the three major concerns that were given to us through the zoning board, those being safety concerns, noise concerns, and environmental concerns. And that said, so our governing body as a rod and gun club or as a shooting facility is the National Shooting Sports Facility. And they've actually come alongside of us, and they work with us at this point to help us develop the facility. So it's just not me trying to figure out, okay, is this going to work or not going to work? They've actually assigned us what's called a range action specialist. And this is a term, a firm called Clark Nexon, and they're out of Roanoke. And they specifically deal with ranges, implementing ranges, sound abatement, and they do military throughout the U.S. as well as law enforcement. They've come alongside us and they've assigned them to us to make sure that our goal is met in sound abatement and noise abatement, keeping with the codes for the property here. The environmental concerns, we're putting together it's a program that specifically adheres to the EPA guidelines for ranges, Environmental Protection Agency. And so we'll have that in place prior to ever even opening, and that, governs what you do with lead. We plan on reclaiming the lead and recycling it, so all of that will be governed by the EPA. It also prevents runoff, surface runoff of the lead from the facility. So we have all of that going into place. As staff said, I canvassed the neighborhood as best I could. I met with those immediately adjacent to the property, gave them my card, gave them my number, and said, if you have any questions, explain what we were doing. Overall, we received fairly good feedback, and so we didn't have any concerns with the immediate neighbors there. Excuse me. Why this facility and why here? Two of the main barriers to any youth sport or youth organization are facilities and finances, and that goes across the board. And so with this facility, our design and our desire is to just take care of all of that in this one single facility. We have some great things in store as an organization. My daughter is here. She has shot her entire life almost. She's a national champion now and collegiate champion with Liberty University. They won 2023 sporting or shotgun championship in Texas. That said, we've been blessed. My business has been blessed. My wife's career has been blessed at Culpeper Hospital. We could afford to give her the best equipment, the best firearms, send her to the best training. And that's just not the case with a lot of youth that are in our program. And so our goal with this is to, excuse me, to get rid of those economic barriers and allow our youth to function and just chase after that championship without the financial barriers in place. We've been contacted by numerous other organizations to use the facility, which would be on a case-by-case basis. A lot of really good county organizations are interested in also utilizing the facility. So Piedmont Area Youth is our organization. Our goal is to develop our youth athletes in all four aspects of their lives, spiritually, physically, emotionally, and mentally. And we believe that when you have a real well-rounded youth, you have a well-rounded adult and a well-rounded citizen when they grow up. And that is our goal. It's also our goal there's a lot of wonderful schools and universities out there that have great shooting sports programs. WVU, Virginia Tech, Liberty University. And it's our goal that when these colleges go to recruit, they don't think first Texas or Michigan or Colorado. We want them to think Virginia first and more explicitly Culpeper County when they go to do their recruiting. We've got some exciting things coming up this year. Next year we'll be giving out our first $1,000 scholarships to two of our graduating seniors who finished the program. And also this year, this coming June, we have a Olympic champion coming for a 3-day camp with our youth. And so they'll be spending 3 days with him just before he goes to Paris to compete in the 2024 Olympics. So we're trying to expose our youth to some amazing opportunities that not only aren't accessible here in Culpeper County, but aren't accessible in the region. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Any questions or comments for the applicant? All right, thank you, sir. If there are no further comments or questions, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. And anyone who wants to come and speak on this matter, raise your hand, and we'll get you to the front. All right. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and again, open this up for discussion or comment or motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we accept the resolution of approval posted to board docs for case number U-2240-23-1. And I would like to say that I live probably within hearing distance of this application, and I think that this is a great opportunity for our youth and to gain this expertise, and I too enjoyed watching WVU's shooting team. They did a phenomenal job, so best luck.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Yes, sir. I similarly am strongly supportive of the application. My best friend from college's son went to the Junior Olympics and continues to progress along those lines. In Tennessee, not Virginia, but I'm very grateful and very supportive, and I'm glad that we're going to have such a facility in Culpeper, hopefully.
That too, I will piggyback off of that. I think it's a great idea. Anytime that we can get youth out of the house, outside, doing things other than video games, I'm 100% behind it, and this is a great opportunity. Any further questions or comments? That said, we have a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Like sign. Motion passes unanimous. If you want to, yeah, thank you. Moving on to item 6.02, case number U-2242-23-1. It's a request by Andrew Campbell, Black Hill Granite, for a conditional use permit to allow the construction and operation of a dimension stone quarry. Again, this said requires a public hearing, and I'll turn this over to our zoning administrator, Neil Drumheller, and planning director, Sam McLaren.
The Board of Supervisors will consider a request by Andrew Campbell of Black Hill Granites LLC for a conditional use permit to allow the construction and operation of a dimensional stone quarry per section 3-2-2.13 of the zoning ordinance in accordance with Article 17 use permits of the zoning ordinance. This property is partially zoned A1 agricultural and heavy industrial and is accessed off of Route 615 Rapidan Road in the Cedar Mountain Magisterial District. It's found on tax map 74 and 75, parcels 59 and 15 respectively. This case was considered by the Planning Commission after proper advertising and public hearing held on Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. The Planning Commission found the request to be in conformance with Section 3-2-2.13 of the zoning ordinance and in accordance with Article 17 of the zoning ordinance. Upon motion duly carried, the Planning Commission recommends to the Board of Supervisors by a 6-0 vote that the proposed use permit be approved. Sincerely, Sanford Reeves, Jr.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, on the screen highlights the parcel in red that Mr. Campbell is seeking to be used for a dimensional stone quarry, which requires a conditional use permit. Some of you will remember Mr. Campbell came before the board, I think it was 2017 officially, when the rezoning was approved for this rectangular area here, a portion of property that he already operates on today and has an active industrial business where he processes dimensional stone and has been for several years now successfully at that site. He's back before the board tonight and for the Planning Commission previous month to ask for permission per code to actually pull stone from the property. not just process it, but pull stone from the property. Just to the north is an area that is dedicated, and then a little bit further to the east and south of where he currently processes stone. In theory, that will probably save some truck traffic, for the property. Today, every piece of stone that comes in that he processes comes from somewhere else. If Mr. Campbell has the opportunity to process stone from the property and sell it that way, it'll eliminate some of the truck traffic on the property. One thing that I did want to point out is just the area in general. Everything around the current property, besides Mr. Campbell's industrial piece, is zoned agricultural as well. You do have some quarry activities, and have been for a number of years in the area. You have some dimensional stone quarrying across the railroad tracks and 615, and then you have some active sites just to the north of where Mr. Campbell seeks to process and continue to process, and then also quarry some dimensional stone on his property, and then another facility here. The comprehensive plan, when you look at that side of things, the comprehensive plan doesn't necessarily seek areas for additional growth in this industry in Culpeper, because we do have some active sites already today, and some that are already permitted that aren't fully utilized. But in this case, it's a little bit unique in the fact that the existing industrial zoning is already there with processing, and it is in very close proximity, as this aerial map shows, to the existing sites. So it's not disjointed with another area of the county. The applicant does have an existing commercial entrance, which you can kind of make out on this aerial map as well, and this is the entrance to the property today. There was some concern from VDOT, and Mr. Campbell will continue to work with VDOT as needed. Staff believes that the commercial entrance that's being used today is viable, and it actually is probably better than the state road, or a lot better than the state road, just to the south on 615, especially when it comes to the entrance for Wilhoit Lane. But we'll continue to work with Mr. Campbell and VDOT if any entrance improvements are made. But that was one area that VDOT did have some concern with site distance. But I believe Mr. Campbell has the entrance located in the best spot, and actually has pretty good site distance either way, a lot better than 653, which is Wilhoit Lane. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further comments from the staff standpoint. The commission did not recommend any conditions for this use permit, which is unique, given we just had 10 with the past use permit. But given that the site is fairly large, and the concept plan that was submitted by Mr. Campbell, he does show some buffers. He'll also have to seek permitting and permission from the Department of Energy, formerly DMME, the Mines, Mineral, and Energy anyway, through the state. They'll be regulating him a lot more strict than the county will, most likely, and he can share more detail on that. The only concern that staff did have that was a concern, and Mr. Campbell did address this with the Planning Commission last month, any type of processing, there's going to be some noise, just like we had with the last case. To a large degree, it's not what you would think of as a gravel stone quarry or something like that we do have, where there's a little bit more noise. There is blasting that's used, but it's targeted, and there's a sawing mechanism that potentially I think is the primary method of removal, which does carry some noise as well. But what Mr. Campbell will tell you, and what he told the Planning Commission, and what helped staff's opinion on this change a little bit, is that they want the biggest block as possible to process. That's the most valuable to them, and that usually takes a little bit less noise because it's a more concentrated effort to get that material out of the ground, not recklessly but carefully. There were no other major concerns that staff drew out, as well as the Planning Commission, and staff recommends approval, as did the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Sam. Any questions or comments for Sam? I see the applicant's here. If you'd like to add anything, please come up.
Good evening, Board. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Sam, thank you. I won't take too much of your time. What you, Sam, touched on a lot of the positives behind the idea. I've spoken to some of you as well. I think that we had some discussion at the Planning Committee level about some of the questions, same thing with the shooting range, noise and environmental topics. And so if I could take a few minutes to walk through some of those with you, and then I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. As already noted, our main way of extracting stone is with wire saws. We don't use dynamite in any meaningful capacity. It's the opposite of what we're trying to do. We want large, crack-free pieces. Dynamite is not what we do. In terms of a decibel level, we asked the saw manufacturers to provide us with some data. They did not have any. They kind of laughed and said they'd never been asked before. And so they went out to their factory with a decibel meter, took the safety covers off these saws, walked around and sent me a video. It was 82 decibels, holding it right up next to it. To put that in perspective, that's quieter than a hairdryer or a lawnmower. So it's not too intrusive, I don't think. Also, where we are out there in the woods, the nearest neighbor to this site would be almost 3 football fields away. And so any noise that's there by the quarry itself, by the time you go through the heavily wooded area, also helps to diminish that. And also with the zoning ordinance for noise, to put it in perspective, daytime noise is 85 for light industrial. So I think that we're right within what we'd be planning to do. The other concerns were environmental based. I have no problem with a 35-foot buffer. There is one creek you could see on the kind of northeastern corner here. We would have storage across that creek. Any creek crossing would be managed, built with the Army Corps of Engineers and then DMME's involvement. So we'd have 2. One would be where you first enter the property on the left side, another further down to be able to facilitate access to that storage yard. When we're talking about storage, we're talking about blocks of stone. We're not talking about chemicals, anything dangerous, anything flammable. It's just the material that's from the ground right there. 35-foot riparian setbacks, and most of the other creeks, it just runs parallel with the property line. So we really don't have a lot of water on these particular parcels. In terms of our water usage, it's pretty minimal. That water is used for cooling the wire saws and for keeping cuts clean. Our existing well on site, I think, is 8 gallons a minute. We would drill a second one. But most of what we use would be closed loop. So it's pumped from the pit into a holding tank. It settles, the dust that's been put into the water, it settles there, it goes into another, and then we pump from that back to reuse it. So we really have a really nominal water usage out there. And we're also set back from those creeks. And in terms of depth, one issue that we talked about was affecting neighbors and their water supply. A typical, these quarries that you saw a picture of that have been there for decades are maybe 50 to 70 feet deep, which is a fraction of the typical well in that part of the county. So there's no effect on the water table beneath. So I'm here, can answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Any questions? Comments? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There are no questions or comments. Again, this requires a public hearing. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for anyone who'd like to come up and speak. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And again, open this up for discussions, comments, or motion.
I have one comment. The draft resolution in board docs, I think, needs some adjustment. Hang on here. It lists the owner of the property as Piedmont Rod and Gun Club.
Yeah, that definitely needs some adjustment. Thank you, Supervisor Durr.
So with that adjustment there and the proper owner put in, I would move that we approve the conditional use permit as described in this resolution.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And motion carries unanimous. Moving on to item 6.03, we have an amendment to the subdivision ordinance. The Board of Supervisors will consider an amendment to the Culpeper County subdivision ordinance, Appendix B of the Culpeper County Code. And with this, again, I'll turn it over to Mr. Drumheller.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'll also read the Planning Commission letter. The Board of Supervisors will consider an amendment to the Culpeper County Subdivision Ordinance, Appendix B. This amendment would simplify and shorten the review process for subdivision plans. Specifically, preliminary and final subdivision plans are proposed to be approved by the Planning and Zoning Department instead of by the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. The case was considered by the Planning Commission after proper advertising and public hearing held on Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. The Planning Commission determined that this amendment is required to provide necessary regulations and provisions for the orderly subdivision of land and its development as required by the Code of Virginia, Chapter 22, Article 6, Sections 15.2, 2240, 2241, 2242, 2251, and 2253 to help improve the public health, safety, convenience, and welfare of the community. Upon motion duly carried, the Planning Commission recommends to the Board of Supervisors by a 5-to-1 vote that the proposed amendment as attached be adopted. Sincerely, Sanford Reeves, Jr.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this is a subdivision text amendment. We do not see a lot of those. We haven't done a subdivision text amendment, I believe, since adjusting some Chapter 14 sanitary regulations, probably a couple years ago already at this point. This is a pretty significant amendment. There's not a lot of moving parts to the amendment as far as pieces of code, as far as the several sections that are in the subdivision ordinance, but it would change the processing portion significantly. Today, when you have a major subdivision, which is anything more than 3 lots in a 5-year period in Culpeper, that constitutes a major subdivision, which means that it not only does staff review that subdivision, and we go through a normal VDOT health reviews as well, the Planning Commission has a public hearing and reviews the subdivision, and then they make a recommendation that comes to the Board of Supervisors for a public hearing and vote as well with the subdivision. Subdivisions, unlike the 2 conditional use permits that we've already seen tonight and a rezoning, are typically ministerial acts, meaning that if someone presents a subdivision plat that meets all the requirements of the ordinance, it should be approved. So that's been the case and has been the case. Different jurisdictions and localities do it a little bit differently. Some smaller localities still review everything through the public hearing process. A lot of localities, though, have it purely as a ministerial act that's approved. A plat would be approved by staff only. The review part of the staff approval does not change. In other words, you still are required to have a VDOT review for a new entrance. The health department's going to review your potential, or actually a soil certified, AOSE is going to review your soil area for your potential drain field and certify to that to meet the code. And those things will not change. There's some other minor amendments throughout, some terminology that's changed as far as to be consistent with terms. You'll see some smaller improvements and references to the zoning administrator or the Office of Planning and Zoning that aren't there today that would be referenced. We did briefly touch, there's a section when it comes to performance standards or performance guarantees. We did revise that section slightly to allow that to be required for certain situations that's not today. And that was something that was touched on at the Rules Committee level. The Planning Commission, as Neil read, it was a 5-to-1 vote. There was one member of the Planning Commission that saw some value in just the Planning Commission potentially reviewing a subdivision, a major subdivision, and foregoing the Board of Supervisors. And that would be similar to what we do with site plans, actually, today, major site plans, where the Planning Commission does have a public hearing review, but the board does not. Staff is in favor of this text amendment, and we're prepared to operate as normal with just 2 less public hearing steps.
Thank you, Sam. Any questions or comments for staff?
Just relative to ministerial, when you say should, if it's all in line, they shall approve, should.
Yeah, and that's what the ordinance should state.
Yes, so there literally is no discretion.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
More comments? That said, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing for anyone who'd like to come forward and speak on this matter. Raise your hand. Wow, seeing none, close the public hearing. And any other questions, comments, or entertain a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I very much appreciate your efficiency at running public hearings. These have been going well. And along those lines, I move that we approve the ordinance amendment as proposed by staff and as approved by the Planning Commission.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or comments? That said, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Like sign. Passes unanimous. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.